Good day, everyone. Hope you are doing well. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Svetlana, as you probably already know, and today we're going to talk about the interesting topic, which is having doubts, detonate. And we will discuss malware detonation use cases. This webinar will be recorded, so all of you will get the recordings after all. And if you will want to ask any questions, we will discuss the questions in the end of the webinar. This webinar will be mostly split on two parts. The first part will be mostly for technical people because we will discuss some specific tools, solutions, setups, and some examples. And the second part of the webinar, it will be quite short part, but still, there we will discuss some solutions that will actually allow to save time, money, and a lot of things. But first things first, so let's start our webinar. First of all, I want to discuss a couple of scenarios. You already saw some of the scenarios actually in the description of the webinar. And let's assume that we have the following situations. For example, we have some users that received some phishing emails. And in these phishing emails, they maybe have some suspicious files or links. And you want to check if these files, if these links are malicious or not. And also, if you assume that they are malicious, how you can be sure that no one actually opened these files, what would be the consequences of opening the files or links, and how you will be able to write some rules for detection and determine if some users open these files or not. Another situation is when you have for example, some research or you are doing threat hunting and you are trying to prepare yourself. So you found some information about some maybe links that are used to distribute the malware, or you found some interesting samples on the internet, maybe in some specific resources, maybe in Twitter, on the malware zoo, in the GitHub, doesn't matter. And you want to know the functionality and behavior of these files or maybe specific links that you found. And also you want to find some indicators of compromise that can be useful for some detection rules, or maybe you want to use the behavioral analysis and based on this analysis, you want to write some rules for threat hunting, for example, to hunt these samples in your infrastructure. Or maybe you found already the incident, or you found some malware on the host in the infrastructure, and you want to understand to which malware family, for example, these samples are related, or you want to know some specific known threat actor that can be related to these malware samples. In these cases, usually there is a set of decisions or a set of solutions that will come to your mind first of all. So typical solutions for these situations is first, and I think one of the most popular solutions, if no, you need to think about this because Google is actually helping a lot sometimes. So Google is the simplest solution because if you found some suspicious files, you always can calculate the hash of these files. You also can try to Google the information about the name of this file. You can try to find some specific strings, some specific unique maybe names or byte sequences. So you can try to find some related information in the Google, right? Also in the Google, you can try to search for some additional information about current campaigns, about different vendor reports, some articles. So maybe you will find something related to your malware, to your URLs, and so on. But in this case, with the Google, we have some problems. For example, if you're facing something that is unknown yet, and there is no information in the Google, or for example, there are no such hashes, malware names, or no information in the specific resources such as Aristotle, for example, about this URL and so on. In this case, you have some problems with all of your tasks related to understanding of functionality of this malware, and you will have some problems with attempting to correlate this malware to some malware family or threat actor, so it could be problematic. In the same way, you can have some problems with data limitations because if there would be something new, let's say that it was already discovered before and there is some information that this file is malicious, but for some new samples that were not analyzed yet, and there are no vendor reports or maybe some like free analyst reports. In this case, you will have some limited information and it won't help you a lot. Another problem is the quality of the data, because for some specific samples, you can find, for example, reports that were done by different researchers or by different vendors, and the information in these reports may be different, even if there is talk about the specific sample, which is the same and with the same hashes. And there is a question to whom you should believe in this situation, because the quality of the data can be different and the information inside can be different. So you will need to determine what exactly you need from these details and to what you need to believe. Also, if you're using Google, for example, for sure it will take a lot of time to find some useful information, especially if there is something new or something not really popular, but you can face such samples on your daily tasks. And of course, there would be some resource costs, because in this case, you will need to have some knowledge or some skilled people who can understand what exactly is the information inside different vendor reports or some articles in the Google. So this could be problematic as well. You can also use different threat intelligence solutions. You can use actually as well the open source solutions. You can use solutions from different vendors. You can use your own internal knowledge base to try to find some information about different samples, about different threat actors, about different malware families, functionality, and so on. But in this case, again, the problems are quite similar. You will have problems with some unknown threats. You will have some limitations of the data depending on what exactly you are using, because if you are using your own internal knowledge base, there could be some missing information just because you didn't face these samples or this malware before. If you're using threat intelligence provided by different vendors, there would be vendor-specific information. So in this case, the data also can have some limitations just because of the different information that different vendors are presenting for their solutions. This will also have some problems with the time cost and resource costs, because in this case, you will spend some time to search for the needed information to determine if this information is relevant for your case or not. And for sure, you will need some people who need to know how to work with these threat intelligence or knowledge bases, and how to extract the useful information, and how to use this information to build, for example, detection rules or threat hunting rules, and so on. Another solution is performing static analysis or do debugging, but in this case, for sure, we are solving the problems with some unknown threats or unknown malware, because you are performing the analysis by yourself. And in this case, even if there is something unknown, you will learn just from the analysis the functionality or some specific information about unique strings, markers, indicators of compromise, and so on. Also, there would be no problem with different anti-sandbox, anti-VM techniques or limitations of the data, because you have a sample and you can do whatever you want with this sample. But here, again, first of all, it will take a lot of time. And for sure, for this analysis, you will need someone, or like you will need the knowledge, specific knowledge for this, or you will need someone who can perform such analysis, because debugging, static analysis, it normally needs quite a lot of experience and knowledge in specific areas, and people need to know specific programming languages such as assembler. They need to know a lot of tools, they need to know a lot of techniques, and they need to know how to work with the information that they are obtaining from this. So this would be problematic in terms of time and in terms of resources as well. And the quality of the data will highly relate to the level of the specialists that are performing this analysis. The simpler ways to get the same, not the same, but quite similar results that will help us in solving our tasks, in solving our scenarios, is to use sandboxes. In this situation, there could be two different options. The first one is to use public sandboxes that are free to use. For example, you can use VirusTotal, because right now VirusTotal have a lot of built-in sandboxes, or you can use some specific sandboxes such as Triage or AnyRun and so on. In this case, it will save you time for sure, because in analysis in the sandboxes is performed automatically. Quality of the data will depend on the sandbox and their developers for sure, but still you can get some useful information from there. The limitations in the data itself also will depend on the vendor or on specific provider of the sandboxes. In this case, there would be problems as well with some anti-sandbox or anti-VM techniques that are used by some samples. But again, it depends on the vendor, because right now some vendors, they are trying to add some additional functionality that will allow to bypass such anti-sandbox and anti-VM techniques. But there could be the problems with the data sharing, for example. In this case, if you are talking about public sandboxes that you're free to use, when you're uploading some document, let's say that you had an email from someone, maybe from the partner, and the partner sent you a pretty strange email with some attachment, and you're not sure, maybe someone actually hacked the partner and sent in from their emails some malicious files to you, and you want to analyze this. But the document also looks like there is something important or something critical, something secret inside. And in this case, if you will try to understand if this file is malicious or not, and if you will send this file to the public sandbox, this file actually will stay on the sandbox. So any person with a paid account on most of the sandboxes will be able to extract your file from there and read everything that is inside. So in this case, we may have the problems with our personal data sharing, with some secret sharing, and basically this would be some kind of data leakage, right? Of course, to solve this problem, we can use the second option, and the second option is to deploy your own sandbox. There are some sandboxes that can be deployed locally, for example, Cuckoo Sandbox, and it will allow you to analyze your files on your side. And in this case, there is no problem with data sharing, but in this case, we will have some problems with the resources, because we need to support this solution. We need to provide some additional physical sources for this, and we need some person who will work with this solution, who will configure this solution, who will analyze this solution, and so on. And also analysis in the sandboxes will be different, and reports will be different. So most probably you will need the person who can read the reports and extract some useful information from the sandbox reports. But still, sandboxes are a quite good solution. But there is also another option, which is Detonation. And in this case, you can create your own virtual environment, and you can set all of the needed tools for your virtual environment to track everything that you need. For example, let's assume that we want to understand the functionality of malware, we want to understand if it's malicious or not, and we want to get some indicators of compromise. In this case, when we are performing detonation on our own environment, we are spending some time for sure to configure this environment, because we need to set up some specific solutions to monitor the network, to monitor the processes, or to log some events, some information. But at the same time, we are saving our time in terms of if we'll perform, for example, static analysis, or if we'll do debugging or search some information in the Google, we will spend much more time than the time for configuring some virtual machines, for example. Also, in this case, we can create one standard virtual machine with all of the needed tools and just create a snapshot for this virtual machine. So it would be easier for us when we are analyzing different samples one by one. We are just getting back to the snapshot and everything is clean, and we have everything set already and prepared for our work with this. So that would be a good opportunity. But when we are doing manual analysis with like manual detonation and analysis of the results, in this case, we have the things that, for example, limitations, like how much data we can obtain from here, the quality of the data, and the time cost for the analysis will highly depend on the specialist and on the level of knowledge of the person who is doing this analysis. Because depending on the experience of this person and knowledge of this person, you will spend more or less time and you will find more or less information. And how you will be able to use these data from the analysis also depends on the level of preparation of the person performing the analysis. Anyway, it's a really good option to try yourself to set your own virtual environment and test different tools, different solutions, just to see how it works and what kind of results you can get from here. The basic set of tools that you can use for your own virtual setup is the following. In this case, I think for most of you, these solutions are quite familiar. The first one, Process Monitor, actually allows you to check the information about the process activity, what processes started the child processes, what processes do some read-write operations with the drive, which processes perform some network activity. And the good thing about the Process Monitor that actually this tool allows you to save this information, to log this information. So you can start the Process Monitor, you can do detonation, so you can execute your file on the virtual machine, and after some time you can just stop the collection of the Process Monitor data and see inside everything that happened. And also Process Monitor allows you to create a lot of different filters and a lot of different sourcing, so you can easily check, for example, process tree, and you can check what processes, for example, exited during the time of analysis, what processes created the new ones. So you will be able to work with this information for some time, and you will be able also to save these results for further analysis or to pass these results to someone else, for example, if you want. Process Hacker is quite similar to Process Monitor, but this tool doesn't allow you to save the information. So you cannot create a log of everything that is happening. You're analyzing with Process Hacker everything in real time. But the most important thing about Process Hacker that it will allow you to get access to the process memory, and you will be able to search for some process injections, for example, so for some code injections, and you will be able to extract these parts, you will be able to analyze them, you will be able to carve some strings from the process memory. So it will help you a lot with this. Also, if you want just to create as many events as possible and log everything like network connections, file creations, process creations, and so on for further analysis, you can also set up a SYSMON. I think everyone is familiar with the SYSMON, but just for the information, there are a lot of different configuration files for the SYSMON in the internet, and some of the configurations, they are really cool, and you can set up the login of almost everything that is needed to perform the analysis. And by the way, SYSMON really saves you time, because using the SYSMON output, you can easily create the detection rules, for example, or threat hunting rules. And I show you the example of SYSMON and how it can help actually. Also, if you want to monitor the network traffic and you want to know what kind of information, maybe what kind of files were sent or received, for sure it's tricky, especially if some secure protocols are used, but you can try at least. Anyway, you will have the information about some specific IP addresses with which some files were communicating and so on. So for network analysis, you can set up a Wireshark that will track everything and create a network dump for you. Also, you can use such tools as Reactshot and autoruns to analyze the environment. For example, Reactshot will allow you to create a kind of snapshot of the registry before you're running some executable file and after this. And in this case, you will be able to compare two snapshots from the registry and understand what kind of registry keys were created, deleted, or changed. So it would be good to detect, for example, persistence techniques related to the registry. And similar thing is autoruns, because autoruns actually shows you the information about all possible persistence techniques, because it will allow you to analyze not only your registry, but also startup folders, WMI, and lots of data. So with this setup, you can get a lot of information for the analysis that you can further use to create some rules or just to analyze the behavior of some malware samples. For sure, it will depend on what exactly you want. Maybe for some cases, you will not need to use all of these solutions. For some of the cases, you may need only SYSMON, for example, or only process monitor, but you can create one virtual machine and set up everything there and just use whatever you want with a clean snapshot every time when you are trying to analyze something. The tricky situation about your own virtual environment that sometimes some tools like it will be problematic for some tools to record all of the information for some specific samples, and I'll also show you such example. Another problem is that you will need, as I already told, the specific knowledge and skills to understand the output of everything that is happening. For example, if you see the creation of some registry key, you need to know what this registry key is about and if it can be used to get persistence, for example, or not, because otherwise you will spend a lot of time just by Googling this information, and we are going back to the time cost, so it would be problematic for us as well. And in this case also, when we are talking about our self-environment, for sure we can understand the information, like we can get the details about some indicators of compromise. We can understand if the file is malicious or not based on the behavior, but it would be a problem for us to, in most of the cases, to determine, for example, specific malware family or specifically attributed to some threat actors, because in this case, again, we need either threat intelligence solutions or internal knowledge base, or we will need some open sources or Google just to find this additional information. And again, we will be back to the problem is time costs, and the problem is the level of people who are performing this analysis. So there are a lot of things to remember about when you're doing your own setup and you're performing your own analysis. Let's check a couple of cases how we can actually apply the manual analysis and analysis with some tools. For example, let's assume that several employees received some emails with suspicious attachments, and we need to understand if these attachments are malicious or not, what would be the consequences of these files opened, and how we can detect if some of our employees actually open these files. So our main task is to check attachments, understand the activity, understand the behavior of these files, get some indicators of compromise, and write the detection rule for this one. In this case, for example, we can use a simple virtual machine with a SYSMON installed, because SYSMON will help us to get the information about processes that were created after we open the file, and we will be able to find the information about some command lines that were used, about some files that were created. So based on this information, it would be easier for us to create the detection rule. And in some cases, we can also use this information, maybe some unique command lines, to try to at least attribute these samples to some malware families. This is the real case actually from one of our clients. These guys got a lot of phishing emails, and they wanted to know if some of the employees of the company opened these files or not. So they asked us to help, and what we did is we performed malware detonation. In this case, as you can see, I used SYSMON. So SYSMON allowed to get the information about Regisphere that was used to run specific files. As you can see, these files had quite similar names, and the extension was OCX. So we already have some command lines from here. And also, we found the information about OneDrive setup exe process and information about the location of this executable file. And actually, OneDrive setup process was created by Excel process, so we found this correlation. And we also found the information about different commands that were executed from this OneDrive setup exe process, and that was whoami, that was net pro ipconfig, and a lot of different commands. So just using the SYSMON and virtual machine, we were able to get the information that allowed us to generate the detection rule. So we used Sigma to generate this type of rule. Actually, I cropped it a bit to put everything on the slide, but here you can see that, for example, when you're using Sigma, you can convert the rule itself to different solutions, and you can use encoder.io, for example, or you can use Sigma C for these. So in this case, you can see that just using the virtual machine, a manual analysis of the SYSMON logs, and SYSMON installed for sure, we were able to generate the rule that actually will help to detect if some of the employees open the file. And some statistics on this case. So we used one virtual machine. This virtual machine took actually 30 GB on our drive, and just 4 GB of RAM we used for this virtual machine. Time for configuration and setup, because this virtual machine was created from scratch, so nothing was prepared before this. 20 minutes. From these 20 minutes, 10 minutes actually the Windows installation took. So as you can see, in general, configuration of the virtual machine with installed operating system will take about 5 or 10 minutes. Time for analysis, 1 hour. Just let me add some information here. 1 hour is not just for analysis of SYSMON event logs. Actually, 1 hour was spent just like drinking tea, coffee, and waiting, because we need some time for like sample to work. Maybe someone will connect to the host, maybe someone will try to perform some actions. So normally we will wait not just 1 hour, but several hours, or maybe we'll just leave it overnight to collect some more information. But in our case, we were lucky enough, so in 1 hour we obtained everything that we wanted to obtain. And time for actual rule creation. So in this time, I included the time for actual analysis of SYSMON logs, 10 minutes. But again, it will depend on the level of knowledge and skills of the specialist who is performing the analysis. And also, this case is quite good in terms of understanding that there are some benefits for using your own virtual setup, your own virtual environment without any paid solutions. Because in some of the cases, it will work perfectly, it will save you time, it will save you money, and you will get everything that you want to get, even if there is something unknown, some maybe new sample just developed by threat actors and used to attack specifically your organization. But in some cases, there could be some problems with your own virtual setup. Let's take a look at this case. Let's say that we were performing threat research and we found several links that potentially can be used to spread some malware. And we want to know if these links are really malicious. What will happen if someone will open these links? And if there would be something malicious, we want to write some rules for hunting on such activity. So we need to check suspicious links. We need to understand what's happening, the behavior after opening these links. We need to collect some indicators of compromise, and we need to write some hunting rules. And in this case, just to compare, I actually performed some kind of experiment, and initially I tried to analyze the links using my own virtual setup. I used SYSMON, I used Process Monitor, I used Process Hacker. Actually, I also took the image of the virtual machine and the memory dump. So I tried to analyze a lot of different things. And there is some statistics of my suffering. There was just one link with one file downloaded. But after execution of this file, just in a couple of minutes, everything was encrypted, because the final step of disinfection was actually some ransomware. And when I extracted all of the needed information, I got more than 15,000 events in the SYSMON, where is huge amount of events. And when I started to look at these events, I realized that a lot of events are actually missing just because there were more than 20 different processes that started simultaneously after running this file. And that's because just because these processes that were starting simultaneously, and these processes, all of them were creating some network connections, they were creating some files, they were performing different actions. SYSMON just wasn't able to manage this amount of data. Also, I took more than 50 different unique IP addresses, and a lot of connections and data exchange with these IP addresses. And it took about 40, like actually much more than 40 hours just to understand what's going on, what kind of processes they are, what's going on with the files. For sure, it was more difficult also because of the ransomware, but still I got all of the information, and it was really hard to understand what's going on here. And additional problem is to understand what exactly the files that were dropped, what are these samples, and to understand the real functionality of these samples, because this was a mess. And even if you're putting these samples to the sandboxes, just to try to understand not just the behavior of the files, but also get some additional information of malware families or specific samples to search for some additional reports in the Google, for example, in this situation, you're suffering a lot because there are different articles, different information from different vendors. This information is not correlated, and for the same sample, you can get the detections that there are absolutely different types of malware. And in this situation, since it was my experiment, I actually tried to put this file also to our platform just to compare, because in this case obviously I had quite a lot of problems, and the problems were, first of all, attribution and classification, because for different files there were no unique strings or no unique command lines or byte sequences. There was just something strange and unknown, and from different vendors you can get different results on these samples. There was limited data because some of the logs were missing in the SYSMON. Some of the information was missing just because of the high load that was created during the first seconds of the execution of the initial file. Also, it was in my case, but in this case you can also meet the problems with the level of specialists who are performing the analysis, because all of us are different people. We are different in terms of the level, in terms of their experience, and depending on this, for some of you it may be easier than for me to analyze these samples. For some of you it can be harder, so it depends. And also crazy time costs. You saw that for me it took more than 40 hours just to realize what's happening, and in some cases for further analysis I think it will take much more time than just this one. In this case, for sure, sandboxing may help in terms of public sandboxes, because they are collecting also some information about different campaigns and what's going on currently from different vendors, so they can help with the attribution. They can try to help with some additional data that can be provided. But again, if you're performing some super secret research that you want to write article based on it and, for example, publish it on the internet, you'll share your information, so there could be some problems with this one. Also, quality of data will be different, again, just because sandboxes are different and developed by different people. Again, you will need to have some level of knowledge and skills to analyze what's going on in the sandboxes, and the most important thing here is that it's a price, because for the most advanced information from the sandboxes, in most of the cases, you need to pay some money. You need to have some payment accounts to get the information about threat intelligence data, some additional information, some advanced sample analysis. And don't forget that they are still having some problems, some of the sandboxes, with anti-sandbox, anti-VM techniques. So in this case, since I had some problems and I spent actually a huge amount of time, so I decided that that's enough. And I decided to try to put this to our malware detonation platform just to compare the results and understand if it will help me to get more information in a faster and shorter period of time. So I put the file to our malware detonation platform, and the results were actually amazing, because just in a couple of minutes I got the results. And these results, as you can see, just from the very beginning, we already can understand that there is some malicious activity. And as you can see, I put it the link, not the file itself, it was just the link. So I got the information that there are 98% that this link is malicious. And also, I was able to see the information about different malware samples that are related to this file. And this could be quite surprised, like Actually, if I didn't do the manual analysis before, most probably if I would see something like this in any sandboxes, I would be quite surprised because there are a lot of different malware samples. And the first thing that you can think about here, that there are some problems with attribution, but as you can see here, that was actually the malware bundle. And just because I did the manual analysis before, I was sure that this is it. So here you can see the information about different Trojans, stealers, ransomware, and so on. And you can see the information about reliability or credibility as well of the data. Also, you can see here the information about the behavior of the file, so you don't need actually to work manually with some logs, with some like network dumps, memory dumps, and so on, because here you can see the information about different behavioral markers that were found during the analysis of these. You can see relations to MITRE attack matrix, and you can see exactly what was performed by this sample, what was malicious, what else was performed, so you can easily analyze it just from one panel. Also here, you can see the information about mapping of different tactics and techniques to MITRE attack matrix. And everything is just here. And if you are not sure about some specific techniques, you can just click on it and get additional information about what exactly was using this technique and how this technique is described by MITRE attack matrix itself. Also, if you need, you can check the file structure. You can see the information about the file that was downloaded. And here, for example, you can see that this link was leading to downloading of some file archive. And that's interesting because in the link, we can see that there is file rar, file zip, something like this, but we can see that this was actually file rar archive. And inside of this archive, we can see the executable file. We can see the information about the icon that is shown to the users. So we can see here information not only about the file and icon, but also the hashes for these files. So we already can use this information to write some detection rules or to detect if some of the employees actually open such files. From here, we can also check the network activity, and this is just amazing because you see not a lot of not just a lot of IP addresses and just the information that some processes communicated with these IP addresses, but you see exactly what kind of requests were performed. And in this case, you can see the information about IP addresses, about specific URLs, and also what exactly was downloaded from these IP addresses. For example, here you can see that they were like service BMP, setup 331XZ, and these are the files that were requested and that were downloaded. And this is just amazing because you don't need actually to analyze anything manually. You can see the correlation between different IPs, URLs, and the files that were downloaded from these IPs just from here. And as you can see, this is just network activity for HTTP requests, but there is also TCP, UDP, DNS, so you can get the information about everything that was happening in the network during this sample execution. Also, you can find the information about all of the process activities. And here you can see not only the process tree, which is also useful because you can see the information about different executable names, their location. You can see the information about parent-child relationships, but you can also see the details about each process activity. As you can see here on the right side, you can click on these buttons and you can see all of the information about specific registry keys that were accessed or created by these specific processes, files that were dropped by these processes, and so on. Here is a nice example. We can see that there is some strange executable file located in the Adobe Films folder, and we can see that this file created this .file here in updated local. We can see the information about hashes of these files. So if we assume that some malicious files were dropped by these samples as well, we can easily take the hashes of these files, and we can also use these hashes to create our detection rules to check right now if someone in organization opened these links or open such files and so on. And the same for registry keys. you can open the information about registry keys, see if there are some registry keys that can be used to get persistence. But in this case, what's the main benefit of this malware detonation platform is that different people with different level actually can use these details. For example, more technical people who already know some information and have some experience in the incident response and digital forensics, such people can take some technical details from here. For example, some specific command lines, specific registry keys that were used by specific samples or during some specific attack, and they can use this information for their own purposes. And if there are some non-technical people or some people who just started their career in information security and don't know some deep details, like technical details about something specifically, in this case, people can read just the top level information, such as the information about if this file is malicious or not, what is percentage of this file being malicious. People can get the information about tactics, techniques, and procedures that were used by this sample. So it would be quite good for different people with different experience. And the cherry on top for this is actually threat intelligence support, because in this case, as you saw in the very beginning, there were a lot of detections with a lot of different malware names. So just by clicking on these malware names, you can get some additional information from our threat intelligence, because we have correlation between malware detonation platform and our threat intelligence solution. And in this case, you can read the information, you can read the descriptions of specific files, specific samples that were used here. You can see even some screenshots and pictures with more deep analysis of these samples. You can see information about the countries in which this sample is active, and you can see the information about correlation of this malware, for example, with some specific threat actors, if there is such correlation. So that's quite good, because you don't actually need to search for some additional information in the open sources in the Google, and you're not spending a lot of time to find everything that would be useful for your tasks. And after that, the only thing that will left for you is to write your detection rules, hunting rules, or use this information in any way you want to use it. So the benefits that this platform is easily configurable. You don't actually need to create a virtual machine. You don't need to set up some tools. You don't need to make some additional preparations, because you're just choosing the platform. Yeah, you are choosing how you want to launch this file, and that's it. In terms of anti-VM techniques or anti-sandbox techniques, this platform is prepared for such techniques and allows to bypass most of these techniques. So in this case, you will have some good results without actually worrying about different bypassing techniques from the malware side. And you will be able to easily get tactics, techniques, procedures, indicators of compromise, anything that you may need, as well as threat intelligence information that will help you to get better understanding on what's going on. And one more time, the solution is suitable for different levels of specialists. So even if you're cannot if your specialist, for example, cannot dive deeper into some technical details, they still will be able to understand the information about the behavior of this file, what this file is doing, if it's malicious or not, and so on. So in this case, for this specific sample, as you can see, actually the analysis of the malware detonation platform took just about 3 or 4 minutes. And during these 3-4 minutes, we got attribution and classification performed. We obtained useful data that we extracted automatically without our manual interactions with this platform. Level here is not a problem, because different level of people can understand the results, and we are saving the time because we don't need to perform manual analysis and search for some additional information and so on. So this was quite good experience, and I'm happy to actually share my experience with this experiment of comparing of the results with manual analysis and also our malware detonation platform. So if we'll go back to our scenarios that we saw in the very beginning, for malware detection, if we need to determine if there are some malicious files or links and what's the percentage that they are malicious, what kind of actions they are performing, what will happen after someone will open the file or follow the link. So we will have all of this information in the outputs of malware detonation platform pretty fast, or we can suffer a bit and to get uh, quite similar information from the manual analysis, but it will really depend on what exactly you're analyzing. For threat research and threat hunting, that's good because also you can use malware detonation platform to understand the behavior of specific samples. You can extract the indicators, you can extract TTPs, and you can write your hunting rules based on this information. And for attribution, it will be performed automatically just because of the correlation of threat intelligence and our malware detonation platform. Or you can spend a lot of time but still find something for known threats in Google. So as you can see, there is some difference, but it's always up to you what to choose. And I'm happy that we provided both options for you. So right now you have some opportunities to choose what would be more suitable for you. If there are some questions, I will be happy to answer them. Okay, question, what is this platform you used in malware detonation? So this is our malware detonation platform developed by Group IB, as you can understand. And this malware detonation platform is right now a part of our platform for threat hunting, for detections. So you can actually use a lot of components of this platform itself, not just malware detonation. If you want to get some more details, some more information on the malware detonation platform and in general about our platforms and solutions, we will send additional link to our website so you'll be able to get everything that you need. Any other questions? We still have a couple of minutes. Okay, no questions. At least I hope that it was interesting. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that you found something useful for you. If you will have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. And if you want to get some more skills, some more knowledge on how to perform the manual analysis or how to do incident responses, digital forensics, you're always welcome to our courses because we have trainings for different levels of people and we are covering a lot of additional materials. Please follow us, check our website updates, and see you maybe on some conferences or on our trainings. Have a good day.